Karen D4 leaned across the folding table they'd set up directly in front of my gate, blocking my only access to the public road. Her smile was plastic, rehearsed.
Mr. Stone, this has gone on long enough. Your stubbornness is affecting property values for everyone. Sign the offer, take the money, and this all goes away.
We can do this the easy way. Say, or we can make your life very, very difficult.
Behind her, 6 SUVs formed a barrier. They'd been there since dawn. It was now past noon.
My name is Bradlin Stone. I'm 62 years old, retired military investigator, constitutional law professor, and the 4th generation of my family to live on this land.
4 acres in what's now called Silver Canyons, Arizona. Prime desert real estate with mountain views and underground spring water that sustained my family since 1952. Before you ask, no, I'm not part of the HOA. My property predates their development by 43 years. When they broke ground in 1995, my grandfather was still alive, still running cattle on land that had been legally deeded, surveyed, and recorded long before any developer drew plans for McMansions and community pools. I'm telling you this story because what happened to me could happen to anyone who owns land adjacent to an HOA, because some people believe that rules, laws, and property rights are negotiable if you have enough money and enough arrogance. And because Karen Day 4 and the Silver Canyons HOA tried to steal my land using forgery, fraud, and systematic harassment that escalated from annoying to criminal over the course of 18 months. This is that story. Every word is true. Every document is real. And by the end, you'll understand why I keep that threatening letter framed on my office wall, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that vigilance is the price of freedom. Settle in. This is going to take a while. The first official contact came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was having coffee on my porch, same morning routine I'd had for 20 years, when a courier van pulled up to my gate. Professional delivery, certified mail, signature required. Inside the envelope was a formal letter on expensive stationery. Silver Canyons Homeowners Association, Property Acquisition Proposal. I read it twice, certain I'd misunderstood. They were offering to purchase my 4 acres for $850,000. Market value was closer to $2.3 million, but that wasn't the insulting part. The insulting part was the language. As the HOA expands its community footprint and modernizes infrastructure, your parcel has been identified as strategically necessary for planned amenities including extended trail systems, water management facilities, and community green space. We believe this represents a fair and mutually beneficial opportunity for transition. Transition. Like my family's 70-year legacy was an inconvenient phase that needed updating. The letter was signed by Karen D4, HOA president, and countersigned by 3 board members I'd never heard of. It included architectural renderings of something called Stone View Villas, luxury townhomes where my house currently stood. I should mention, my property isn't just land, it's a working homestead. Solar panels, well water, extensive gardens, workshop, and barn. I built most of it myself after retiring from the Army. It's completely self-sufficient and completely paid off. Why would I sell at a 63% loss to people I'd never agreed to be governed by? I drafted a response that same day, polite but firm, declined the offer, included copies of my deed, survey maps, and tax records proving my land was not part of their jurisdiction, never had been, and never would be. I thought that would be the end of it. I was catastrophically wrong. The second letter arrived 3 weeks later. Same courier service, same expensive stationery, but the tone had changed. Mr. Stone, we're disappointed by your refusal to engage constructively with community development efforts. While we respect property rights, we must also ensure compliance with county regulations regarding land use, water rights, and environmental impact. Your continued resistance necessitates regulatory review to ensure your property meets current standards. Regulatory review, a threat wrapped in bureaucratic language. The letter went on to suggest that my well might be drawing from aquifers that rightfully serve the community, that my solar array might require updated permitting, that my agricultural activities might violate residential zoning. All lies. My well was drilled in 1967, grandfathered under every water law on the books. My solar installation was fully permitted and inspected. And there was no residential zoning. This was unincorporated county land with agricultural zoning that predated any development. But here's the thing about threats. They don't need to be true to be effective. They just need to be expensive to fight. I spent the next week gathering documentation. Well permits, solar installation records, zoning confirmations, agricultural exemption certificates, everything proving my property was 100% compliant with every applicable law. I sent copies to the HOA with another polite but firm rejection, suggested they consult with their legal counsel before continuing this line of action, mentioned that harassment of property owners could constitute tortious interference. I thought legal language would scare them off. Instead, it made them more creative. The flyers appeared 2 days later. I was driving home from the hardware store when I spotted them. Bright yellow paper, professionally printed, stapled to my gate and fence posts every 20 feet. Coming soon, Stoneview Villas, luxury desert living. Contact Silver Canyon's HOA for pre-construction opportunities. Below the text was an artist's rendering of townhomes. My land. My house digitally erased and replaced with cookie-cutter development. I tore them all down, counted 43 individual flyers on my property line alone. Someone had spent hours putting these up, probably at night, definitely trespassing. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the phone number at the bottom connected to the HOA office. People were actually calling, asking about purchasing units in a development that didn't exist, on land they didn't own, that wasn't for sale. I called the HOA office directly, got a receptionist who seemed genuinely confused. "I'm calling about the Stoneview Villas flyers on my property." "Oh yes, that's a very exciting project. Would you like information about pre-construction pricing?" "I'd like to know why you're advertising development on private property you don't own." Pause. "I'll transfer you to Mrs. DeFore." Karen's voice came on, smooth as ice. "Mr. Stone, those are informational materials for a proposed project, simply exploring options. On my land, without my permission, that's fraud. That's creative planning, and if you'd been more cooperative, we could have included you in the process. But since you've chosen to be difficult, we're moving forward with alternative approaches." Alternative approaches to stealing my property? No one's stealing anything. We're simply preparing for what we believe is the inevitable and mutually beneficial outcome. You're one man, Mr. Stone. We're a community of 847 homes. Democracy tends to favor the majority. She hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, realizing this wasn't a negotiation, it was a campaign. They'd decided my land should be theirs, and they were systematically working to make that happen, legality be damned. That's when I started documenting everything.
Military training teaches you one critical skill: intelligence gathering. Document everything. Assume nothing. Trust evidence, not promises. I installed security cameras, 8 high-definition units covering every angle of my property line, motion-activated, night vision, cloud backup. If anyone stepped foot on my land, I'd have footage. The surveillance paid off within 48 hours. 2:17 a.m. Motion alert. Black SUV, no plates visible in the darkness, pulled up to my gate. 2 people got out. Too dark to identify faces, but body language suggested they were young, probably hired help rather than HOA members. They spent 20 minutes posting more flyers, not just on my fence, but on the public road approaches, making it look like an official development announcement. I had clear footage, timestamp, vehicle description, everything I'd need for a trespassing complaint. But I didn't call the sheriff yet, because I wanted to know how far they'd go, how organized this campaign was, whether this was Karen acting alone or the entire board conspiring. The answer came faster than expected. 3 days later, convoy of vehicles appeared. 7 SUVs, matching white vehicles with Silver Canyon's HOA stickers on the sides. They pulled up at 6:47 a.m. and parked in a semicircle directly in front of my gate, blocking the only entrance to my property. I watched from my security feed as people got out. Folding tables, chairs, a canopy tent, a cooler. They were setting up camp. At 7:15 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Stone, this is Karen DeFore. I'm outside your gate with several board members and concerned community residents. We'd like to have a conversation about your property and the future of this community. Face to face. No lawyers, just neighbors talking. I looked at the camera feed. 12 people now sitting comfortably under the canopy, drinking coffee, looking like they were prepared to wait. You're blocking my access to the public road. That's illegal. We're on the road, not on your property. We have every right to peaceful assembly. We'll wait as long as necessary for you to be reasonable. How long are you planning to wait? However long it takes. I hung up and called my lawyer.
Deborah Martinez had been my attorney for 15 years. Real estate law, property disputes, military veteran advocacy. She'd handled my estate planning, water rights documentation, and various minor legal issues. But this was different. They're doing what? Her voice crackled with disbelief. Sitting outside my gate, blocking access, refusing to leave until I agree to negotiate. That's not negotiation, that's extortion. Call the sheriff, now. I called the county sheriff's non-emergency line, explained the situation. The dispatcher seemed confused. HOA disputes weren't usually their jurisdiction, but blocking property access definitely was. We'll send a deputy out. Might be an hour or 2. We're handling a DUI situation right now. An hour turned into 3. The HOA encampment grew. More vehicles, more people. Someone brought a portable speaker playing soft jazz. They weren't protesters. They looked like they were having a tailgating party. On my property line. At 11:23 a.m., a sheriff's deputy finally arrived. Young guy, probably late 20s, clearly uncomfortable with whatever he was walking into. I met him at the gate. So did Karen, who'd apparently appointed herself spokeswoman. The deputy looked between us, then at the encampment. "Ma'am, what's going on here?" Karen's smile was brilliant. "Officer, we're simply having a peaceful community gathering to discuss important neighborhood issues with Mr. Stone. We're not blocking anything, the road is public, and we have every right to assemble. You're blocking his access to his property. The gate opens outward. Technically, we're not blocking anything. He could still exit if he wanted." The deputy looked at me. "Is that true? Can you get out?" I gestured to the vehicles parked inches from my gate. "Technically, maybe. Practically, no. They've created a barrier." "Mr. Stone has been uncooperative regarding community development," Karen interjected smoothly. "We're trying to resolve this amicably before it becomes a legal issue." "It's already a legal issue," I said flatly. "This is harassment and intimidation." The deputy sighed, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. "Ma'am, I need you and your group to move your vehicles and clear this area. You're creating a potential public safety hazard and interfering with property access." "Ma'am," his voice hardened. "I'm not asking. You have 15 minutes to clear this area, or I'll start writing citations for obstruction." Karen's smile finally cracked. "This is absurd.
We're community members exercising our rights. You're trespassing on a county road right-of-way and interfering with access. 15 minutes. She stared at him, clearly weighing whether to escalate. Then she turned to her assembled group. Everyone, please pack up. We'll continue this conversation through proper channels. The encampment dispersed slowly, deliberately. Karen made sure to lock eyes with me as she left. This isn't over, Mr. Stone. Not even close. The deputy waited until every vehicle was gone, then turned to me. Sir, you might want to get a lawyer involved. This feels like it's going to get worse before it gets better. Already have one, but thank you, deputy. He nodded and left. I stood at my gate, watching dust settle on the empty road, knowing with absolute certainty that he was right. It was going to get much, much worse.
The bureaucratic harassment started exactly 72 hours after the gate standoff. County code enforcement called. Anonymous complaint about unpermitted structures on my property. An inspector would need access for a full compliance review. I knew immediately it was the HOA, but I cooperated. Let the inspector walk every inch of my land. Showed permits for everything. Solar array, workshop, barn, septic system, well. Everything built to code, everything documented. The inspector, a patient man named Rodriguez, shook his head as he filled out his report. Mr. Stone, whoever filed this complaint wasted everyone's time. Your property is in exemplary condition, better than most. I'm dismissing the complaint as unfounded. Can you tell me who filed it? Anonymous. But between you and me, he glanced around conspiratorially. We've been getting a lot of complaints from HOAs lately. They don't like properties that aren't under their control. Makes them nervous. He left. I added his report to my growing file of documentation. 2 days later, Water Authority inspection. Same story. Anonymous complaint about illegal well usage. Same outcome. My well was grandfathered, legal, and perfectly maintained. Then environmental services about alleged dumping. Then agricultural compliance about livestock. I don't have livestock. Every single complaint was anonymous. Every single one was baseless, and every single inspection required me to take time off, be present, provide documentation, defend my property. It was death by 1,000 bureaucratic cuts. But they made a mistake, because every inspection created a paper trail of frivolous complaints. And pattern harassment is actionable. Deborah was building a case. Then the real bombshell dropped. I was running errands in town when I drove past the HOA model home complex. Something caught my eye. A new sign, large and professional. Future Site, Stone View Villas, Luxury Desert Townhomes, Opening Fall 2025, with an arrow pointing toward my property. I pulled over, heart pounding. They'd escalated from flyers to official signage, marketing a development that didn't exist on land they didn't own. I took photos. Then I drove directly to the HOA administrative office. The receptionist looked nervous when I walked in. Mr. Stone, if you're here to see Mrs. DeFore, I'm here to see whoever authorized that fraudulent sign on Canyon View Road. I don't know what. I put my phone on her desk, photo of the sign visible. That sign advertises development on my property. Property your organization doesn't own. That's fraud. So I'll ask again, who authorized it? She paled. I'll get Mrs. DeFore. Karen appeared, composed as ever. Mr. Stone, always a pleasure. Explain the sign. Marketing for a proposed development, perfectly legal. On my land that you don't own. How is that legal?
We have reasonable expectation that property will become available through either negotiated sale or regulatory acquisition. We're simply being proactive. Regulatory acquisition? You mean eminent domain? This isn't a public project. There are many legal pathways to land transfer. Our attorneys are exploring all options. I leaned forward. Let me be crystal clear. I'm not selling. Not now, not ever. And if you continue advertising development on my property, I'll sue you personally for fraud, libel, and tortious interference. Sue away, Mr. Stone. We have excellent legal representation and deep pockets. I left before I said something I'd regret. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her words, regulatory acquisition. It implied they had some legal pathway I didn't know about. So I started digging. Public records, HOA meeting minutes, development proposals, county planning documents. What I found made my blood run cold.
At 2 a.m., sitting at my computer, I found it. Buried in county records, a plat map amendment filed 6 weeks earlier by Silver Canyon's HOA, expanding their development boundary to include my 4 acres, my land, incorporated into their jurisdiction without my knowledge or consent. The document included survey coordinates, legal descriptions, and, this was the key, notarized signatures from county officials approving the boundary change. I stared at the screen, trying to understand how this was possible. You can't just unilaterally annex private property. The owner has to consent. There are hearings, notifications, legal procedures. Unless someone forged the documents. I downloaded everything. Then I called Deborah, waking her up. "This better be important," she growled. They filed a plat map amendment claiming my property is part of the HOA. Silence. Then, "Send me everything, right now." I forwarded the files, heard her computer chime, then a long, low whistle. "Brad, this is forged. The notarizations look wrong. The signatures don't match county officials I know, and there's no public hearing record which is legally required for boundary amendments. So what do? We file a lawsuit immediately, and we contact the county clerk's office and the district attorney, because if those notarizations are fake, this isn't just civil fraud, it's criminal." We worked through the night. By 8 a.m., we had a comprehensive civil lawsuit ready. Libel, fraud, harassment, tortious interference, and attempted land theft. Named defendants, Silver Canyon's HOA, Karen DeFore personally, and 3 board members who'd signed the documents. We filed at 9 a.m., and I made one more call to an old Army buddy who'd now worked as an investigator for the county clerk's office. "Marcus, I need a favor. I need you to look at some documents and tell me if they're legitimate." "What kind of documents?" "Plat maps, notarizations, possibly forged." He was quiet for a moment. "You're talking about criminal investigation territory, Brad." "I know. That's why I'm calling you. Send me what you have." I did. And then I waited. Marcus called back 3 hours later. "Brad, where did you get these documents?" "County records, public filing." "Why?" "Because the notary stamps are fake. I ran the serial numbers. They don't exist. The county official signatures are forged. I compared them to originals. And the surveyor listed? He retired 8 years ago. This whole filing is fraudulent." My hands gripped the phone. "Can you prove it?" "Already am. I've escalated this to the DA's office. They're opening a criminal investigation. And Brad, there's more. I pulled the HOA's other filings. They've done this before." "Done what before?" "Incremental boundary expansions, small parcels, mostly vacant land. Filed plat amendments with forged documents, waited for the owner to not notice, then claimed jurisdiction. They've been doing it for at least 5 years. I felt like I'd been punched. "How many properties?" "I found evidence of 7 so far. Yours is the biggest and the first time someone fought back." This wasn't just harassment. It was a systematic land grab scheme, a conspiracy. "What happens now?"
Criminal investigation, federal probably, since it involves wire fraud and falsification of government documents. You need to document everything, every interaction, every threat, every contact. This is going to get big. It got big, fast. The federal investigation moved with surprising speed. Turns out, when you forge government documents and commit wire fraud, the FBI takes interest. Within 2 weeks, investigators had interviewed the retired surveyor whose name was forged, traced the fake notary stamps to an online supplier, subpoenaed HOA financial records showing payments to shell companies, identified other property owners who'd been illegally annexed, and they found something else: internal emails. A whistleblower, someone inside the HOA administration who'd grown disgusted with Karen's tactics, provided investigators with years of correspondence. Emails discussing strategic acquisition targets, messages about regulatory pressure tactics, documents outlining how to encourage voluntary sales through systematic inconvenience. My case wasn't an isolated incident, it was standard operating procedure. The investigator, Special Agent Williams, met with me at my property. "Mr. Stone, I want to thank you for bringing this to our attention. What started as your complaint has uncovered a significant fraud operation affecting multiple property owners and involving corruption of public records. How did they get away with it for so long?" He smiled. "I know. That's why we're here."
The arrest happened at an HOA board meeting. Poetic justice, really. It was a regular monthly meeting. Third Thursday, 7 p.m., Community Center. About 40 residents in attendance for typical HOA business. Budget reviews, landscaping contracts, pool maintenance. Karen was mid-presentation about upcoming community improvements when federal agents walked in. Karen DeFore? She looked up, annoyed at the interruption. "Yes? Can this wait until after?" FBI. You're under arrest for wire fraud, falsification of government documents, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. The room erupted. Residents jumped up, phones came out, chaos spread like wildfire. Karen's face went from annoyed to pale to furious in seconds. "This is absurd. I'm conducting official business." You have the right to remain silent. The agent was professional, calm, completely unbothered by the scene. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. They handcuffed her right there, read her full Miranda rights while residents filmed everything, escorted her out of the community center she'd ruled like a personal fiefdom. 3 other board members were arrested simultaneously at their homes. The shell company operators were picked up within hours. The criminal complaint was unsealed the next day. 17 counts of fraud, conspiracy, forgery, maximum sentences totaling 45 years. The HOA collapsed almost immediately. Without Karen's iron control, the board disintegrated. Emergency elections were held. New leadership came in, horrified by what they discovered. The new president, a retired accountant named Michael Chen, reached out personally. "Mr. Stone, I want to apologize on behalf of the community. What happened to you was unconscionable. We're voiding all fraudulent documents, establishing ethics oversight, and implementing transparency measures. And we want to formally acknowledge that your property has never been and will never be under HOA jurisdiction." "I appreciate that, Michael, but I'm not dropping the civil lawsuit." "I understand. And honestly, you shouldn't. We need to face consequences, real consequences." The civil case settled 4 months later. Terms included financial, $1.2 million paid to me for damages, legal fees, and punitive damages, $500,000 distributed among other property owners who'd been illegally annexed, $250,000 to county clerk's office for document verification systems. Structural changes: complete HOA board replacement, independent auditing for 5 years, mandatory ethics training, public transparency requirements,
Prohibition on any future boundary amendments without triple verification. Personal. Permanent restraining order against Karen DeFore, once released from prison. Formal public apology published in local newspapers. My property formally and permanently exempted from any HOA jurisdiction. Recorded in perpetuity. Karen DeFore was ultimately convicted on 14 counts, sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, ordered to pay $3.7 million in restitution, lost her law license. Yes, she was an attorney, which made the fraud even more egregious. The shell company operators got shorter sentences in exchange for testimony. The board members who participated got probation and community service. They'd been intimidated by Karen, following orders without questioning legality.
I still live on my 4 acres, still have my solar panels, my workshop, my gardens. The land my great-grandfather bought, my grandfather worked, my father loved, and I'll eventually pass to my daughter. The threatening letter Karen sent, the one about alternative approaches and regulatory review, is framed on my office wall, not as a trophy, as a reminder. Reminder that institutions can be corrupted, that authority can be abused, that silence enables tyrants, that documentation saves lives, that fighting back matters. The new HOA leadership is actually pretty decent. They focus on actual community issues, road maintenance, fire safety, community events, instead of power games and land grabs. We have a cordial, distant relationship. They respect my independence. I don't interfere with their operations. It's how it should have been all along. I think about the other property owners who weren't as prepared as I was, who didn't have military investigative training or legal knowledge or the resources to fight back. How many lost their land because they didn't know their rights? How many were intimidated into selling? That's why I'm telling this story, because HOAs can be wonderful community organizations, but they can also be weaponized by people who confuse authority with ownership, who treat neighborhoods like personal kingdoms, who believe property rights are obstacles rather than foundations. Know your property boundaries, know your deed, know your rights. Document everything, and never, ever assume that official-looking documents are legitimate just because they appear in county records. Verify, always verify. My daughter asks me sometimes if I regret the fight, if it would have been easier to just sell, take the money, move somewhere else. I tell her the same thing my grandfather told my father and my father told me. This land isn't just property, it's principle. It's proof that individuals matter, that you don't have to surrender to bullies just because they have impressive titles and expensive lawyers, that standing your ground isn't stubbornness, it's dignity. She's 17 now. In a few years, this land will be hers, and she'll defend it the same way 4 generations before her have, because some things are worth fighting for. Thank you for listening to my story. It took 70 minutes because the truth takes time. Justice takes time, but both are worth the investment. If you're facing HOA abuse, property disputes, or bureaucratic harassment, document everything. Consult lawyers early. Don't assume official documents are legitimate just because they appear in county records. Verify. Always verify. Please like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Leave a comment about where you're watching from and whether you faced similar situations. Share your stories. Knowledge is power, and shared knowledge is collective power. Do you think the sentences were fair? Should the HOA have faced more consequences? What would you have done differently? The conversation continues in the comments. Until next time, remember, know your rights, defend your land, and never surrender to bullies, no matter how official they pretend to be.